From the Windows, Doors, and More Studios, your one-stop shop for all your kitchen and bath needs. The Pat Miller Program. Whoa, 92.3 FM and 1190 AM. Depend on it.
And welcome back for this, our third final hour today here on the Pat Miller Program for this Saturday. Sir, introduce yourselves. Our people probably remember who you are, but if you tell us, sir, with your complete rank and serial number and everything.
Yeah, hey, Pat. I'm Chief Master Sergeant Kyle Hoopengarner. I'm the command chief at the 122nd Fighter Wing.
Yep.
It's great to be back.
Yep. It was the last time I saw you was when you had us out there for that kind of a media thing out there on the new jets coming in, or have you been with me since then?
We had that, but then I did an interview last month and had a young lady from the 122nd.
Yeah, what was her name? See,
doggone it.
See, your memory's just like
you
mine.
Put me on the spot.
No, sharp young lady.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah, as is the young lady that we had the time before, who's the photographer out there. Because when we came out to see the new jet, she was out there snapping the photos and all that.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing going on out there. As we sit here right now, roughly how many people are intrinsically involved in the 122nd? I know some of them are full-time, some of them are part-time, but is it 800? Is it 1,000? Is it 1,200? What is it?
Yeah, so we have right at just about 1,000 airmen assigned to the wing, and about 350 are full-time, 650 are what you think of when you think of guardsmen.
Okay.
Traditional guardsmen that come in 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So we're about a 35-65 split on that.
Every once in a while, I'm out and about, and once I'll hear a very distinct sound, and I'll look up, usually through the moonroof of my car, and I'll look up, and I'll see the F-Series jet flying over. Are we getting some pretty good working out of the couple that we have that are up and running so far?
Yeah. So, yes, I'm glad to hear that people are noticing. We're trying to make some noise in the skies over Fort Wayne. But, yeah, it's been a work in progress.
Yeah.
The jets that we've gotten are not in great shape. I've told you that before.
Right. We saw some of that the day that we were out there at the hangar.
Yeah. They all leak.
Yeah.
They all leak different
Everything
fluids.
leaks.
And so our guys and gals are working their tails off to try to generate sorties so that we can get training going, and it's a little bit more each week.
Now, a sortie, I first became aware of that back in the Gulf War when we first started that Desert Storm and that whole bit. With a sortie, it was like when they went and they did an operation and they dropped a bomb or whatever, and they came back to base. That was a sortie, but not all sorties are directly combat related. If they take a flight up, just to take the flight up to acquaint themselves with the plane, that also is a sortie.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Anytime the jet takes off and lands, that's considered a sortie. And there's a myriad of different things that they're trying to accomplish during those sorties. Sometimes they're combat related. Sometimes they're just to maintain landing currency for the pilot. So, yeah.
Do you guys have, this is an odd question, but I've often wondered about this, because you've got the air traffic control tower there at the airport, which is civilian. And you guys don't really have control over that tower on day-to-day operations, but you work through them when you're out doing your sorties and everything, right? I mean, they got to know you're taking off and you're coming back and that whole bit.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we do a lot of cooperation with the Fort Wayne Airport Authority, with the FAA, and it's a cool thing with the Guard that a lot of Guard units have joint operations with civilian airports.
Okay.
So share the runway, have separate ramps, but there's a lot of collaboration there. So yeah, it's anytime that we're flying, we have to coordinate with the ATC folks and with the airport authority to make sure that we're deconflicting and there's not civilian aircraft trying to take off while we're doing military operations.
I mean, there are certain times of day. Certain times in the morning hours and certain times in the early evening hours, it's probably not the best time for you guys to say, well, we'll just take off and land then, because the commercial stuff is pretty backed up during that time. But you have those moments late in the morning, mid-afternoon, when it's probably more plausible.
Yeah, those are our prime times that seem to work best for us, and so we set up our schedule accordingly.
Now, we have, and I understand they're not all fully operational, but how many of those F-jets are here right now at Fort Wayne?
We have currently 8 of them on station right now.
Okay.
Ultimately, we'll have 21 by the end of this calendar year. But they're going to be scattered across the country at times, either flying at other installations or getting depot-level maintenance done at in other states. And,
depot level?
Yeah, so that's the real deep maintenance that that our folks aren't necessarily qualified to accomplish.
Okay.
So we send them off to, there's a routine schedule for depot maintenance on these aircraft. And,
okay.
So they'll be scattered about until we get them all finally back home. And
So that's the difference in getting my Ford Fusion in for an oil change or getting it in to have everything checked out and the whole bit. I mean, there's maintenance and then there's maintenance.
yeah, like sending it back to the factory for the experts to really, really dig in deep on stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Now, we think that we'll have, of course, now we're still in the first half of the year, but we're thinking the balance of 8 up to 21, if we don't have them all, we'll be close by the end of this calendar year.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a contractual agreement within the Air Force for we call it the Iron Flow. The aircraft will be to us by December of 24.
Okay. Now, the A-10s that were here, now they're all gone.
Yes.
So now, did they all go to a same base, or are they scattered as well?
They got scattered about to some of the few remaining A-10 flying wings.
Okay.
They took some of our better A-10 aircraft, and then the oldest of our jets then went to the Boneyard out in Arizona.
Okay.
And
That place does exist.
it really does. Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah. But which is sad, but it's also kind of exciting. I mean, when we started using them, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and all of that, they weren't brand new then. And they did an incredible job. I'll never forget that I met a guy, and I met him at an event down in Bluffton, and it was not a military event; it was a political event. But he had been involved in the theater in Iraq, and they talked about how the best sound on the planet, if you're part of a ground crew and you're out there fighting, is you hear an A-10 coming at you from behind. Because you're like, okay, Big Brother's here now. Because I mean, those guns on those things, forget bombs, just the guns on those planes would make the enemy scatter.
Yeah, they were absolutely devastating in that theater. They were so effective, and it was one of the worst sounds that our enemy could hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but we're excited, for the F-16s. Like we've talked about before, they fly high, they fly fast, they attack in a different way, they have different capabilities, but they're still going to do incredible things for our country.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for the first time that we have a flyover with those planes, because it's probably been 20 Three Rivers festivals ago that we had those types of aircraft in a flyover in Fort Wayne, maybe even longer. But that'll be amazing, because those are the sounds and the looks and the speed that really gets the crowd going. Because part of this, I mean, whether or not people in Fort Wayne are excited about the planes doesn't make them function better in theater, but it kind of does, because when the crowd and the community is behind you, it makes life slightly easier for you guys on the ground, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We just had an event last weekend, the Race for the Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
It was not a 122nd event. It's hosted by the Northeast Indiana-based Community Council.
Right.
And I had the honor of giving the opening comments for that, and I talked about how I honestly believe that the best place to serve in the military in this country is in Northeast Indiana, and it's because of the level of support that we get from our community. Organizations like the NIBCC that raise money that goes back to our airmen, that doesn't exist across the country. I honestly believe that the support we get is truly unparalleled across the nation, and it's an incredible thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised in Indianapolis, and I met my wife at college in Springfield, Missouri. But she and I first came to Fort Wayne in 1978. That was a true statement even then, that the community seemed to understand what we were trying to do. But during the whole Desert Shield, Desert Storm, that whole walk, I mean, it galvanized us together with them. Because I would see A-10s on CNN at night when they just come back from sorties, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if those are our A-10s, but they're probably at the same base with our A-10s. I mean, it just gave you this roaring sense of pride. That's Northeast Indiana guys that are over there making all this happen. That's incredible.
Yeah, those are the moments that it really brings it home, right?
Yeah,
it makes
absolutely.
it real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's advertising you can't buy.
Yeah.
So, although I'd be glad to charge you if you don't mind. Okay, so let me ask you this. Now, we're going into Memorial Day weekend. How much more does this mean to you all? I mean, I know you guys appreciate Veterans Day, because Veterans Day celebrates all of you that have served or are serving, the whole bit. But Memorial Day are those guys that finally lived up to the fullest price of the pledge that they took when they went into the service of our country. Can you sense a change in mood around the base, like the few days before and few days after Memorial Day?
Yeah, kind of at times. You know, I was thinking about this, and I was talking with Colonel Wagner just yesterday about this, and kind of what it means to people. And it, you know, for most people in the community, Memorial Day means you get Monday off from work. We're going to have some cookouts and have some drinks over the weekend. It's going to be, you know, the race in Indianapolis every year. So that's kind of what Memorial Day means to a lot of folks. But yeah, to those of us that serve, who you know, many of us have lost friends in combat, and know folks that have given that ultimate sacrifice. It carries a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
And I encourage people over the weekend to just pause for a second when you have that cookout, you're hanging out around the pool. You know, maybe raise a glass to those who have paid that ultimate price.
Yeah, because I haven't paid that price, and the majority of people who have put on the uniform of the country, we honor them for their great service, but they also haven't paid that price. But there's like 1.3 million that have.
Yeah.
And we need to remember them. We are free because of the way that they allowed themselves to be used for the benefit of our country. And I don't think we could ever get too far away from that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. When I come back in just a minute, I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to kick him out of here. But there are 4 days each year when we stop and we pause, and I'm able to step away from politics and step totally into the patriotic mode of 4 days a year that we set aside to recognize those in our military. Do you know what those days are? We'll talk about them, and we're going to do it straight ahead. This is Pat Miller with you on this Memorial Day weekend Saturday here on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and on the WOWO app.
And welcome back. And again, our thanks to Chief Master Sergeant Kyle Hoopengarner of the 122nd for spending some time with us. I like having him in about once a month. It kind of keeps us grounded on what's going on. And I meant what I said to him yesterday. I found out the other day, this was probably about 2 days ago, I heard that ever distinct sound of a fighter jet going over. And although I'm way out on the northeast part of Allen County, we are in the flight path if you're coming in that direction. If you're coming in from the northeast to the southwest at Fort Wayne International Airport, we're on that flight path. And I heard the sound, and I looked up, and sure enough, there was one of those F-16s. And you just feel this swell, this uproarious pride in what it is that's going on because of them being there. But and I meant that to him, and I'm glad that everything is really coming together for them. Kyle Hoopengarner, doing just an incredible job out there, and appreciate all that they do. And, of course, the commander of the base out there that's with him, Colonel Josh Wagner, the great work that they do, and the 1,000 to 1,200 of those that are out there that are part of their ongoing 122nd Fighter Wing. Incredible work they do. Some of you are listening today, and I appreciate it. And from us to you, thank you for what you do. For many of you, thank you for what you have done, and thank you for what you are willing to do should the nation call upon you. And we really, really, really appreciate you being there for us. Let me go back to one of the points that I was making before my interview with Kyle, and that is when I was talking about how the United Nations and the United Nations ruling court, which is not really a ruling court, the UN court cannot determine anything. There is no one government that's behind the United Nations court. There's no one force except for the UN fighting forces. And folks, look, there are more people than just Americans that fight under the flag of the UN. But if America was not participating in it, there would be none. There would be none. I get a little tired of these people sitting up there in their black coats and their little ruffled neckties that they have, telling us how it is that we should respond, how Israel should respond. After the brutal attack of October 7th, when Hamas stormed into southern Israel and killed about 1,200 people, almost all of them civilians, and abducted about 250. Now, Israel says that around 100 hostages are still captive in Gaza, and about 30 Americans. The Israeli army said last Friday that it received the bodies of 3 more hostages killed on October the 7th. Well, Israel's army says the bodies were given over to them, and then the UN court comes out They've barely gotten these 3 more hostages in their hands in Israel, and the UN court says, well, okay, this is time now. Go ahead and stop your operation down in Rafah. I don't think Israel is very likely to comply, do you? Can you possibly imagine if you take the brave men that went into the compound where they ultimately found the architect of 9/11, and when they went in there and the one soldier was face to face in his bedroom upstairs with Osama bin Laden, can you possibly imagine how we would have responded, how the world would have responded if the UN courts would have said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Get out of our way. We are addressing the deaths and the brutal attack on our soil by these people, not you. So just step back. Somebody needs to tell them that. Now, in all of this, the Security Council is going to vote on a resolution decrying attacks on the UN and aid workers and demanding protection. In other words, while they're in there trying to give out their goods and services and all that, they need to be protected. They need to guarantee. They say, you people need to come together on behalf of the UN, and you need to protect our people that are. Why? Why? Now, I'm not for killing anybody, but why is it in the midst of a conflict like this, why is it that UN people on the ground are of more value than other people on the ground? I think that's a hard sell. Iran has taken their president that was killed in this helicopter crash, and they just finished interring him in the holiest Shiite site in the entire nation of Iran, and they're giving him the highest honor. And now it looks like that the people on the UN court are trying to do ultimately the same thing. The top United Nations court, which meets in Hague, by the way, over in the Netherlands, has ordered Israel to immediately halt its military offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. But then they stopped short of ordering a full ceasefire. Well, do you want to stop or don't you want to stop? Put up or shut up. What is it you want? Now, I don't think Israel's going to comply with the order that came out last Friday. It will probably ratchet up pressure on the increasingly isolated country there of Gaza. But it has even come, this pressure on Israel. You guys need to back off now. It's time to back off. Some of the strongest pressure that they're getting is coming from us, from the United States. Why are we doing that? While the ruling came out by the International Court of Justice, and it is a blow to Israel's international standing, but only because the people that are reading it and accepting it around the world are as weak and soft in the belly as those in the UN. The court does not have a police force to enforce its orders. Can I make a juxtaposition here? So that's Hamas, Gaza, and Israel. In another case on its docket, Russia has so far ignored a 2020 order by this same court, to halt its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Do you see any of that coming to pass? Neither do I. Neither do I. It's Memorial Day weekend. What does it mean? What could it mean? What should it mean to us? And we're going to have that, our Memorial Day discussion together during our last half hour here. Glad you're with us on this Saturday here with Pat Miller on WOWO 92.3 FM, 1190 AM. Welcome back. Our last half hour together here on this Saturday. And although I enjoy every Saturday that we spend together, I think because of what this Saturday is, what this weekend is, what it means or should mean to our country, causes it to mean a great deal. All the way back in 1808, so not that long had we been a country, when John Adams said, "Our obligations to our country never cease with our lives. In other words, John Adams said, we need to be willing to pay for it up to and including our lives and all that that means. That's where we need to be. There are 4 days each year that I especially like. Now, I love Easter and Christmas, of course, and all the rest. I love my anniversary. Just spent that with my lovely bride on Thursday. Love you, honey. But everything, all those, but there are some special days to me each year. There are 4 of them. The National Medal of Honor Day, which is March 25th. Armed Forces Day, which is the 3rd Saturday in May. Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, the day after tomorrow, and Veterans Day, November the 11th. And sometimes there's great confusion. Some will wonder why we don't have everybody standing up in our church services or at public events. Let's have everybody who has served us, and we thank you on this Memorial Day. No, I'm sorry. And God bless people that have served. I don't diminish their service at all. But the uniform is put on by those who are willing to consider going into service and paying the ultimate price. Veterans Day is for those who wore that uniform or are wearing it and are ready to pay that price. And Memorial Day is for those that never really had the opportunity to take that uniform off. But when we come to these 4 days every year, and it's coming again Monday, it gives us a chance to step away from all the rigors of all the politics and all the cultural analysis and all the my party and your party, and to just focus on the goodness of American patriots who have served all of us, by the way, regardless of party, regardless of religion background or none. They die for all of us, and they do it with honor and distinction at a mortal risk of their own lives. Memorial Day is reserved to honor those who have given their lives in the uniformed service of our nation, those who died in combat, defending their brothers in arms to sustain the liberty we enjoy in accordance with the oath that they took to support and to defend our Constitution. Now, unfortunately, this weekend there will be mixed messages, and we should call them what they are. Forgive me for this, but one mixed message is going to be the president of Joe Biden on hallowed ground, assuming, I've not seen his calendar, but assuming he's going to pop up to deliver some remarks at Arlington, and when somebody shows him how, he's going to grab a wreath to go forward and lay it at the tomb of the unknown. His words are going to come off very hollow, not because of the mental acuities that he's suffering from, but because of the fact that he's out there displaying with these words at a place like Arlington or somewhere else. His hollow words are going to be up against a backdrop of his administrative ineptitude, his record of undermining military morale and readiness, and the national security of our nation. It's rivaled by only 2 former presidents in the last century. And don't believe me, look it up. Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton. Another mixed message will be the saturation of consumers with Memorial Day sales. Now, I'm for saving a buck like everybody else. I have never, ever been to a point when I realized why it was that a furniture sale or a mattress sale or a used car sale on Memorial Day was another way of recognizing those that paid the ultimate price for us. Me saving another 10% on my purchase, that gives great honor to those people. How? In my view, that's all this is. I think that is a disgraceful use of the blood of our nation's patriot sons and our patriot daughters as fodder for profiteering. Memorial Day is not a sale. More than 1.3 million American patriots have already paid the full price. I don't want to dishonor our fallen by promoting high-profile hero receptions for service personnel who did not perish in combat or service-related accidents. And again, that's not to diminish any price that somebody else has paid. My position is this. They paid a price that nobody else did except those that died with them, before them, or after them. I don't want to do anything, and I'm trying to be as serious as I can be. I don't want to do anything to dishonor our combat fallen. I have been on an honor flight when I have stood there at the Vietnam Memorial, or I have stood with somebody at the Korean Memorial, or out in the World War II Memorial. I have stood next to somebody who has been on the battlefield with some of these people. And some of them, like my serviceman that was with whom I was the guardian on my very first honor flight. And when we got to the remembrance of Korea, and he began to well up. And this was a guy who didn't talk a whole lot before this. He was kind of a quiet guy. And instantly he just started opening up. And I said, "What's your story?" And he began to tell me about that one day when the guy that was his tail gunner, they were in a two-man plane. He flew. He took pictures of what was going on behind enemy lines. It was their job to give some advanced warning and training for the people coming up after them. And one day, he said, who knows why they did it, but one day our commandants called us in, and they took my guy off my plane and put him on that plane over there, took that guy off that plane and put him on my plane. Well, as far as they knew, everything went off without a hitch. They came back from their assigned rounds. They had taken the pictures they had to take. They did everything they were supposed to do. And when they got back, my friend landed and was looking and didn't see the plane come in, didn't see it. And he said pretty soon he saw somebody come out from the headquarters and walk all the way out to him on the firing line and said, they're not coming back. They were taken down. I don't think that my friend that was on that honor flight with me would tolerate any of these efforts to debase or belittle or to speak lowly of what it is that was the meaning of Memorial Day. Some more thoughts, and then we'll finish it up together. Thank you for being with us today. I genuinely appreciate it, especially this weekend. And we're going to talk more, and we'll do it straight ahead right here on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and at WOWO.com.
Closing time. Open all the doors and let you out into the world.
Hey everybody, again, thank you so much. In the midst of a busy weekend, or some of you are listening to this later on our podcast, maybe it's Saturday night to you now, or maybe it's Sunday, or maybe it's even Monday. But thank you for taking time to listen to the program today, a lot of the topics that we've covered, but also some of our thoughts relative to Memorial Day. Look, I don't think that we should tolerate anything, and I do mean anything. Memorial Day sales, or this sale or that sale, or this meritorious thing or that meritorious thing, or the total bastardization of what it means to have a Memorial Day. This is not a Veterans Day. This is not this is not a day that's set aside, as some are, for good reason. This is not National Medal of Honor Day. This is not Armed Services Day. This is Memorial Day. Those that have served our country but did not die in the battlefield, we'll remember them on November the 11th. But this is for those who put on the uniform and never had the chance to take it off. They died in that uniform that they put on. And I think we need to do whatever it is that we can to make sure that we never dishonor those people. We should not tolerate any of these efforts to tear down, belittle, or to debase the meaning of Memorial Day. John Stuart Mill, who was a 19th century libertarian philosopher, so it's been a while, He had an essay that he wrote that I think is one of the most incredible thoughts that anybody has put on paper. It's in his essay called The Contest in America. Here's what he said. War is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of morale and moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks nothing worth a war, is worse. A man who has nothing which he cares more about than he does about his personal safety is a miserable creature who has no business of chance of being free, unless made and kept by the exertions of better men than himself. Wow. I mean, if you think about it, it's that decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling that accounts for why so many miserable creatures among us have downgraded Memorial Day to nothing more than a date to exploit for political charades and commercial greed. Many Americans would be too preoccupied with celebrations to recognize the priceless burden borne by generations of our uniformed patriots. Many politicos will use Memorial Day as a soapbox, as they put on some kind of a cheap, feigned red, white, and blue fake pass at patriotism, while in reality, they constantly violate their oaths to support and defend our Constitution. Now, somebody else I wanted to read to you today, because I think his writings are equally as incredible as those by John Stuart Mill, and those are by Leo Thorsness. Now, Leo Thorsness wrote in his valorous actions over Vietnam on 19th of April, 1967. 11 days later, he was shot down and captured as a POW in Vietnam for 6 brutal years. Well, Leo Thorsness, looking back over many years of Memorial Day observances, wrote, and I read years ago on this program, and reread Medal of Honor by Leo Thorsness. And in that, he said this, as the past president of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, which is kind of a rather exclusive group, as you might imagine. I mean, the only membership requirement is that you need to be a recipient of a Medal of Honor. Well, that's no small thing. I mean, somebody said, oh, really? That's all you have to do? Well, yeah, okay, go out and get your Medal of Honor, and you come back and tell me if you think he handled it okay. It's pretty exclusive. He was a lifelong, faithful patriot. He was a genuine hero. He was a humble conservative advocate for family, for faith and freedom, and a strong supporter of the National Medal of Honor Heritage Center. And now, when I tell you he was a faithful patriot, and he was a conservative advocate for what? For family, for faith, and freedom. And if you think back through some of the major headlines over the course of the last 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, those things don't seem to resonate with a lot of people. Your family doesn't mean a whole lot. If we can find a way to go in there and degrade Dad and make him look like a Nimrod, then, all the better. Because if we can make Dad weak, the family's weak, and then you're going to rely on your government more. If you think that's not happening, we're not paying attention. If you're not for faith, and who is, we started the program today talking about how that there are some that want to go in and have ceremonies on sacred ground relative to religious beliefs of those that paid the price, and they're being denied that right by our own government. You can't have prayers of faith on holy ground. Well, then how is it holy? Freedom. And yet we have those that are constantly fighting and trying to suppress our freedoms, to make them something that we cannot fight for any longer. That if you don't have them by now, you're not going to have them. Well, he was the author of something called Surviving Hell, which was a remarkable statement, a testimony to all Vietnam POWs and the brutality of their incarceration. His years as a POW overlapped with several other friends, including Colonel Roger Ingleson and Lieutenant Colonel Bill Gaunt. Well, Leo wrote Mike's Flag, the preface to a children's book called I'm Your Flag. And this book was sponsored by the Patriot Foundation Trust. I know what you're thinking. Why would you want to quote something from a children's book on an important day like this on a great big station like WOWO. Because I'm telling you, there are some people listening to me right now that don't understand this, and there are some people representing all of us in Congress, and they don't get it either. Ahead of Memorial Day, let's revisit his words. This is Mike's flag, his preface to the children's book, I'm Your Flag. What do you think of when you see a little American flag in front of a grave marker? Let me tell you the story about one little flag. As a fighter pilot on my 93rd mission over North Vietnam, my F-105 was hit by an air-to-air missile, and my electronic warfare officer, Harold Johnson, and I were forced to eject. After unsuccessful rescue attempts, we were captured by enemy forces, and we were imprisoned in the infamous Hanoi Hilton for the next 6 years. One day in our 6th year of imprisonment, a young Navy pilot named Mike Christian found a piece of cloth in a gutter. After we collected other small rags, he worked them secretly at night to piece them together into a flag. He made red from ground-up roof tiles and blue from tiny amounts of ink. Then he used rice glue to paste the colors onto the rags. Using thread from his blanket and a homemade bamboo needle, he sewed the pieces together, adding white fragments for stars. One morning, he whispered from the back of our cell, "Hey, gang, look here," and he proudly held up that tattered flag, waving it as if in a breeze. Instantly, we all snapped to attention and saluted with tears in our eyes. A week later, the guards were searching our cells and found Mike's flag and tore it to pieces. That night, they pulled him out of the cell, and for his simple gesture of patriotism, they tortured him. At daylight, they pushed what was left of Mike back through the cell door. Despite the torture, the next day, Mike gathered the shredded remains of that little flag and pieced it back together again. Today, whenever I see our flag, I think of Mike and the morning he first waved that tattered emblem of our great nation. It was then, thousands of miles from home, imprisoned by a brutal enemy, that he courageously demonstrated the liberty it represents. And that is what I see in every American flag. This is the same flag that you're going to see out tomorrow and Monday. You're going to see it in memorial parks here and all around the state and all around the country. You're going to see it at the 500. You're going to hear songs to it before that great race and at other gatherings. We'll see it all. We'll see it for those who don't make it home before they get out of their uniforms, because when their coffins come off of the airplanes at various air bases around the country, it's the same flag that will be laid over their bodies and then folded and given to their loved ones as they are laid to rest. Tens of millions of genuine patriots who will properly honor all our fallen soldiers, our fallen sailors, our airmen, our Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who have refreshed the tree of liberty with their blood, indeed with their lives, so that we might remain proud and we might remain numbered among the free. This is why, when we vote this fall, and now I'm getting political, we need to vote for those who understand this America and who understand this patriotism. Unbelievers cannot take the stand they need to take for our own benefit. To all of you, thanks for listening. Happy Memorial Day.
Podcasts by Federated Media.